Hi, it's Monica. You will have to forgive the lighting. This is after work. It is dark outside. I have my light on full blast, and nowhere else in my room has a better lighting. So we're just gonna have this weird shadow right here. It's fine. I should really buy a lighting kit. We are here with a reading wrap-up video for March through April. And now you may be thinking, Monica, what about January through February? Where's that wrap-up? Wish I could tell you. I recorded it. This is before I got my laptop. I recorded it on my phone. I went to go edit it, and it was gone. I don't know where it went. With missing that one, I can just go over it a little bit. I read 12 books between January and February, and I did the same between March and April. I read 12 books, so I read 24 books total, which is insane to me, but I also very much love it. I love having read 24 books, and as of recording this video on May 1st, I've read 25, and I'm so excited about it. Because that's more books off my TBR. We love it. But let us get into the books. And I'm going to pull up Storygraph because I am pretty sure I read one or two ebooks and I want to make sure I remember them. The first book that I read was part of my Flipper Flop reading challenge, and it was a Victorian Posy. This is a book of prose and poetry from like the Victorian or had a Victorian feel, and they all had to do with flowers. I only had this book because I found it, I think at a yard sale or a flea market, and I thought it was cool and it's got this cool box. But I think because it didn't tell a story, it was just a bunch of random clips or passages, I just didn't like it that much. Part of me is thinking of keeping it specifically to save the pictures and maybe some of the passages to use in my journal. Because it's my book, I can do what I want with it. But I don't know yet. So I'm going to hold on to it, but we're going to figure out what we want to do with this. The next book I read was for my library's book club because the March theme was steampunk. And so the book that I picked, which I had on my shelf, I was so excited when I saw it in the list, is The Invisible Library. And this is by Genevieve Cogman. This is the first in the Invisible Library series. I first picked this book up because it gave me the vibe of the Librarians, the movie and show series, starring Noah Wiley, and I love that series so much, and so this book gave me those vibes, and I really liked it. I don't own the other books. I know my library does. It's been kind of chilly out lately, but we are getting into the warmer times, and I now have a bike, so I can get to the library faster, so I may pick up the rest of these books. Maybe I'll make a reading vlog. I'll like take out all of the books and I'll try and read them in a quick amount of time. But I very much enjoyed this one, and I am so glad that I finally have it. Next book that I read was an ebook, and it was called A Polar Expedition and Other Stimulating Research Opportunities by Cass O'Shire. I read this book for an event that I'm going to in December, and I have been wanting to read this book, this author's book. I think it's The Care or Taking Care of Orcs. It is actually the second book in the series with A Polar Expedition, The Shades of Sanctuary. So I decided to read Shades first. I liked it. It's not my favorite book that I've read. It is a plus-sized romance with bear shifters. So I liked it. It's not my favorite that I've read, but I feel like the second book, the orc book, I'm gonna like that more. I don't know, something in me, like a gut feeling, says I'm gonna like that one more. You'll start to see what a crazy journey I went on with some of my flipper flops. Because the next book I read was Quiet Presence. This is Histories of Franco-Americans in New England, or Histoires de Franco-Américains à New England, by Dyke Hendrickson. The first half of the book talks about Franco-Americans, French-Canadians coming down from Canada, Acadia, into the US, specifically in New England, because that's just where they migrated first. And then the second half was just first-person accounts. And I am a Franco-American. My family came from Canada. I don't know when they came down from Canada, but I know they did. And I focused on Franco-Americans for my senior project for my French major, and I actually used a few chapters of this book for that project, so I'm glad that I actually got to sit down and read the full story. So I like this one. It's a nonfiction though, so if you are interested in history, like immigration history, American history, like the beginning of America, or French history, I recommend it. Even though it is a little old, it's kind of hard to find. I really don't know if you could find this. I had to scour for this book when I got it to do my research. The next book I read is my first, and so far only, 5-star book of the year. And if you know me, this probably won't be a surprise on what book it is. Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This book arrived on my doorstep, and I was sad to say that I didn't get to read it immediately. I read I think 2 or 3 chapters the day I got it, and then I was busy with work and other things, so I didn't read it until the weekend, but I basically read it in one day, taking a single break to go hang out with friends and eat and then come back. I loved this book. I loved it better than Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the one that focuses on the 10th games and basically follows President Snow. This one follows Haymitch in the 50th games. And I loved seeing more of District 12, in a different way, how much it changed from, the 10th games in Ballad, and how different it was from what we see in the Hunger Games trilogy. And I've always loved Haymitch as a character, and so being able to see more of his story was really great, and looking at how the media changed it and how the media portrayed it versus what actually happened. And we know Suzanne Collins only likes to write when she has something to say, and she had stuff to say, and I love reading what she has to say. I love it. I can't wait for the movie. I'm still waiting for more casting announcements, because as of right now, last I checked, we still only have 4 announcements. Hopefully we get more. But I'm so happy that I did not wait as long as I did to pick this up that I did with the rest of the series, because I didn't start reading the Hunger Games until the first movie came out, because I had no idea what it was. So, glad I jumped in with this one. The next book I read was also an ebook. It was actually, I don't know if it would classify as a novella or a short story, but it was only 80 pages, but it was Autumn in Connecticut, and it was by E.S. McMillan, which is also part of the event that I am going to in December, so I read that book. I thought the name was cute because the main character, her name is Autumn, and she goes to Connecticut during autumn, the season of autumn, to watch the leaves change, because she grew up in South Carolina, I believe it was. She grew up in the South, but her mom was from Connecticut, and she got some very dire news, and she was like, I need to go see the leaves change. I've never seen the leaves change. My mom told me all about it. I'm going to see the leaves change. She meets a guy who's got his own history. It was a very fast book. Everything moved very, very fast. And so I feel like if the book was longer and had more time to develop the story and the relationship between the characters, I would have liked it a little bit more. But for what it was okay. Next that I read, also for my library's book club, was to read a book by an author of color. And for that, I chose Binti. And this is by Nnedi Okorafor. I found this at a library book sale, and I had heard about it online. I don't remember where I had heard about it or what it was about. I just remembered the cover. And so I took it, and I had no idea what it was about. And I read it basically in one sitting. I started reading it at night and then I fell asleep and then I just finished reading it the next day. So I'm saying it was in one sitting. It's a very tiny little novella, but I very much enjoyed it. I thought it was so interesting and unique. The character of Binti and everything that she goes through. She's traveling to go to this very like prestigious school. She's the first of her people, her tribe, who was ever even offered a place at this school. And so she goes because she's very smart, deserves to be there. And something happens to the ship along the way and she ends up having to kind of be the middleman and almost like a negotiator between the school and like the people who took over the ship. It's very interesting. I very much like it, and there are more, and so I'm going to figure out how to get my hands on those, see if the library has them. But I definitely want to continue reading this because it was a quick, refreshing little sci-fi read. The next book is The Cat by Edith Revell. And this book follows a mother right after the devastating loss of her son in a car accident. He's 11, or he's just about to turn 11, and he's killed by in a car accident, and it's following her almost like diary entries of the few months after of her trying to figure out what to do because she doesn't want to live anymore without her son, but they have a cat. And she knows that her son would never want her to give the cat away to somebody else and that he would want his mom to watch the cat. And so she's coming to terms with her grief and, the people around her and how they're responding to it and how they're, some people just have no idea that she's going through this. And she's like, how can these people be so happy when my son's not here? So I liked it. It was very, very interesting read, and I don't know if I'd read it again, but I definitely recommend it for somebody who maybe wants to understand the grieving process a little bit, or somebody who has gone through a grieving process like this, just to kind of see if maybe what they went through was not crazy and they're not the only one who would have done it. The next three you can see in my most recent reading blog, where I read all of the unread graphic novels on my shelf, so you can hear more about my thoughts on those there. But it is Kim Harrison's Bloodwork, Matt Johnson's Incognito, and Miriam Kentin's We Are On Our Own. I read these three in a reading blog. I am not going to keep Bloodwork and We Are On Our Own. I am going to keep Incognito, so I am going to figure out how to remove this library plastic sleeve that's on it, or see if I can remove it so I can put it on my shelf without the plastic, because I don't want the plastic. Just don't. Last book I read between March and April, I finished pretty recently, and this one was a nonfiction, so I listened to it audiobook style, which was narrated by the two authors, and that was You'll Never Believe What Happened to Lacey, Crazy Stories About Racism. It's like I was mixing the French and the English way to say it. Crazy Stories About Racism, and this is by Lacey Lamar and Amber Ruffin. Amber Ruffin has her own show on Peacock. I think it's just called The Amber Ruffin Show. She's also a writer on Late Night with Seth Meyers. And Lacey Lamar is her older sister. And so it's just stories that they tell together of things that have happened to Lacey in their hometown of Omaha, Nebraska. And the sometimes very crazy stuff that white people will say to her and do to her. And oh my goodness, I knew some of this stuff because I've heard it from other people, like heard other tales and stories of it happening to other people. But it's just crazy to know that it's not an uncommon occurrence, that it's a common occurrence that this happens. But the way that they wrote it was, they twisted so much comedy into it that for me it was a very, fun, comedic read. But for some other people, this could be a very big eye-opener. But then again, maybe those people who this would be an eye-opener for would not read it. But I know they have another book, World Record of Racist Stories, which is already out. It came out in 2022. This one came out in 2020, I believe. So I'm going to try and find that book because I very much like their dynamic as sisters and listening to the stories. And it also does teach me a little bit because there were things that, you know, maybe I knew about but didn't fully know about, you know, that were racist. And I can learn a little bit more. And also just laugh at people who are just so bluntly racist. I like laughing at racists. If you don't like laughing at racists, or if you are a racist, get off my channel. No. Now, I do have 3 more books to talk about. These were all DNFs. My first 3 DNFs of the year. So I did want to mention them in this video kind of quickly and why I DNF'd them. 2 of them I have DNF'd with the intention that I'm never going to pick the book back up. And one of them I DNF'd because I don't think it was the right time to read it. And I'll tell you why. So we'll start with that one. So the one that I DNF'd, because it just wasn't the right time for me to read it, was Kaikai by Vaishnavi Patel. And so I'm very interested in this book. I've mentioned it before. So I am going to pick this book up again. I'm going to give it another try. But I did try reading this literally the day after I finished Sunrise on the Reaping. And so I think I just did it to myself where like I could not pay attention to this book because I just kept thinking of Sunrise on the Reaping, and so it just was not a good time for me to read this. What I read, I genuinely liked. I read like 2-3 chapters, and I did genuinely like it. I know I could have paused it on Storygraph, but I didn't want to because I don't know when I'm going to pick this book back up. When I do, I hope I will go all the way through it. So I'll list the next 2 books and then go one by one on the reasons why I have DNF'd these, and I'm not going to pick them back up ever, and I'm actually going to get rid of them. We have Bunny by Mona Awad, and then we have One to Watch by Kate Stayman Linden. Bunny I picked up, one, because I don't think I've ever seen this cover where the bunny was orange and the background was black. I've always seen like the pink background with the black bunny. But a lot of people really like this book, and so I picked it up, and then as I started reading this, I got this funny feeling that I had heard something about this author. And so I looked it up. This author has written 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl. And from what I could tell, this author is skinny, or straight-sized, and not plus-size or fat. And the book, 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl, only ends in a happy ending because the main character stops being fat, does like excessive dieting, excessive weight loss, like unhealthy amounts after losing her husband and her friends. So she only gets happy and gets them back because she loses weight, which is very harmful. Very harmful. And I didn't like it. And I saw some reviews that said that there was some fat phobia in this book, but then also I didn't like the way that the main character referred to the bunnies a lot, constantly calling them the C word. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on this platform, but constantly calling them that. So I didn't like it. And also like villainizing New England, and was like, oh yeah, my New England town, you're always gonna see a pervert. New England's just full of perverts and crazy people. Girl, why did you go to a school in New England then? I don't care if it's the best program. If you don't like New England, don't go to school there. I don't get it. Also, her best friend seemed like a royal bitch, and I didn't like her. So that's why I DNF'd Bunny. You cannot get me to pick this book back up. I won't do it. Now, One to Watch. I had high hopes for this book because it is about a plus-size beauty vlogger, she content creator around fashion, and after she posts a viral tweet about this Bachelor-esque show that she watches stating that there's just no diversity in the show, she gets asked to be like the Bachelorette. I think it's called The Main Squeeze. She's the main squeeze. And so I was excited about that because I've read If the Shoe Fits by Julie Murphy, which was also kind of like a Bachelor-esque book, but it was a Cinderella retelling. So that main girl character, she was one of the contestants vying for the Bachelor, but I really liked that book. I feel like I could have liked this book and continued with it if not for a few things. So one, I have read books that have mixed media in them. So you would see like posts with comments and see like people comments about the character. And you've always heard, or at least I've seen in books, where the main character, especially if she's plus size or if he's plus size, he'll talk about how they're just very vile comments that are left. So like assault comments, or just saying like, oh, like it's not our word, she would just take it, like things like that. But the characters would mainly say that happens. We wouldn't read them. You're actually reading some of those like fake comments in this book, and it really threw me and I didn't like it. The other thing that was like a big ew was literally within the first chapter, she sleeps with a married man who is her friend, who she's in love with, who is engaged. Or he's not a married man, he's engaged. I keep saying a married man, but anyway, she sleeps with this man who is engaged and set to get married soon. And like he willingly sleeps with her too. Like they're flirting at this party and they're all over each other, and then they get to her back to her house and they sleep together. And then the next morning he's gone and ghosts her, and she doesn't answer messages for a while, and she keeps thinking about him and how nobody's gonna be like him. And then she's on the show and she's comparing him to the contestants a little bit. And one of the contestants just like straight up leaves. Like he does the walk in to say hi to her. He's like, oh, it's you, and he leaves. And the show's like, the producer was like, don't worry, we planned that. I didn't like that. I really didn't like it. I didn't like that aspect. Like the cheating aspect was the main thing that I didn't like, and it happened so early. So I was able to stop the book pretty quickly. But yeah, so I'm sad that happened. I will not pick this book up again. It makes me sad, but there are other plus size romances that I have on my shelf and that are out there that I haven't read that I will like. So it is okay if I don't like one of them. I lied. 2 more books I'm going to talk about. The books I purchased within the last 2 months. So I only purchased 2, so good for me. So far it's been an average of 6 books read a month, 1 book purchased a month, which I think is a pretty good ratio. It used to be the other way around. The first book, I went to what is called the Plot Twist Book Bar in Denton, Texas. It is a romance book bar. They have a wide array of romances, so historical, monster romance, romantasy, regular fiction, contemporary, LGBTQ, just a lot of those. And they have a bar with both alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages. They have author events. It's really cool. My friend and I tried to go on grand opening, and the line was wrapped like around the block, and their grand opening was in January, and we were not going to stand out in the cold because we didn't think they'd be that busy. So we didn't have coats because even in Texas it can get cold, I have learned. We went in March just to finally go. We both had a weekend that we were free, and so I bought The Next Best Fling. This is by Gabriela Gamez. And this book I have seen in the shelves before, and it seemed interesting. And when the worker that was there saw, I told her I was looking for plus size romances. She was like, basically every single one that I recommend to you, we sold out of, because they sell out so quickly at that place. They are very popular. But then I mentioned this one, and she's like, oh yes, like she didn't realize they had this one still in stock. And she's like, I love that one. So I did get this somewhat as a recommendation from the worker, and I am excited for it because I like fake dating. I think it's cute. And then the next one, I was hanging out with friends. We went, I forget everything we did that day, but we were hanging out, and we ended up going to a half-price books. And walking around, in the romance section, I decided to pick up Filthy Rich Vampire, which, with the lighting, you can't really see. Filthy Rich Vampire. This is by Geneva Lee. And what was so funny is this is the first book in the series. They had 1 copy of the first book, 0 copies of the second and third books, and 4 copies of the 4th book. This one also has the fake dating trope in it, but it is a vampire in this like high society, and he needs to find a wife. Like it's like that time, like in Bridgerton, where it's time to find a wife. That season. And he runs into this human cellist who is playing the cello at a gala event that he's at, and finds out he's a vampire. And so he goes, hey, let's pretend we're dating for this entire season so I don't have to find a wife. People will think I have a wife, but I don't. And in return, I'll make sure you're protected from vampires. And so again, I think fake dating is cute. And I also like vampires. So win-win. Thank you so much for watching, going through the books that I've read, the books that I've purchased, the ones I've DNF'd. Let me know if you have read any of these, what your thoughts are on them, and leave those thoughts in the comments below. We can have a conversation, but then I will see you in another new video soon. A bientôt!